Hello, and welcome back to Nolanville. It's everybody's favorite teacher, or your favorite teacher's favorite teacher, Mr. Nolan. And today's lesson is going to be about solving equations involving fractions and decimals. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these problems. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at number 1. So, first we want to go ahead and start off by rewriting the problem. We're going to read that as negative 1/4 n minus 4 equals 7/4 n minus 3. The next thing we want to go ahead and do is divide our equation into two parts. We have a left side and a right side. Okay, and I'm just going to take this down just a little further. Alright, now we want to go ahead and identify our like terms, and we want to start with our variable terms. And with this problem here, I'm going to go ahead and get all my variables to the left hand side. So that means I have to move that 7/4 n because it's on the right, and the way that I'm going to move it is by making it a negative, or adding negative 7/4 n to both sides. So that's what I write right here, or you can say that as subtract 7/4 n from both sides. When we do that, the 7/4 n cancel out on the right side, and on the left side over here we have to combine these like terms. And since they are the same sign, we're simply going to add them. Same sign, you add. So if I work that out over here to the left, I have negative 1/4 and negative 7/4. Now, the first thing we need to remember is that when adding or subtracting fractions, the denominator has to be the same, which in this case they are. So the denominator is going to be 4, and we're really just adding. That's 7 and 1, that makes 8, and we're going to keep that negative. So that's going to become negative 8 divided by 4, which we can simplify to be just negative 2. And remember, right here, okay, this is a scenario where we have a negative divided by a positive, which equals a negative, and that's why we had negative 2. So after all of that, alright, we can come back over here. We can simply just write negative 2n, remember we had the variable there, minus 4 equals, we just dropped that negative 3 down, so that's going to be negative 3 right here. Okay. Alright, next I want to go ahead and get my other like terms together, the constant. So, and I want to move my negative 4, I want to get that on the right side. So the way to do that is by adding positive 4 to both sides. Okay. Underline that. When I do that, the 4's cancel out. I'm going to drop down that negative 2n, and now I'm going to combine that negative 3 and that positive 4, but these are different signs, so we just end up subtracting. Okay, different signs, subtract, and when we do that, we get a positive 1, right? Because we keep the sign of the larger number. The larger number is 4, and it's positive. Now our last step here is to divide both sides by negative 2. And when we are done, we're going to have a final answer of negative 1/2. And we can circle that. And the reason our final answer is going to be negative is because, once again, right here, when we divide, now we have a positive divided by a negative. But either way, that answer is still going to be negative. And that'll be it for number 1. Alright, number 2. Number 2, we're going to start off once again by rewriting it. So we're going to have 7m minus 2/5 equals 6m minus 7/5. Next, we want to once again go ahead and split our equation into two parts, the left side and the right side. And we want to first start off by combining our like terms, our variables. I want to move my variables to the left. That means I have to move all my constant terms to the right. So I'm going to start by subtracting 6m from both sides. And the reason I would subtract the 6m is because it was positive. So in order to move it, I have to do the opposite of it. So when I do that, the 6m's on the right cancel out, and 7m minus 6m makes 1m, or just m, okay? Minus 2/5 equals negative 7/5, okay? And just in case you don't see that, that is negative 7/5, all right? Now we want to combine our other like terms, our constant terms, and we do that by adding. In this case, we're going to add 2/5 to both sides. So positive 2/5, positive 2/5, Draw our line. The 2/5 over here cancel out. We drop down to 1m equals. Now we need to figure out what this is going to be. So I'm just going to bubble that. Well, if we look at the signs, we know that there are different signs. And with different signs, we subtract. Okay? First thing we want to make sure we do when we subtract these are the denominators the same. And since they are, we can just go ahead and subtract. We have negative 7/5, we have positive 2/5. We really are subtracting to get our answer. 7 minus 2 is 5, and the bigger number is negative, okay? Because the 7 is bigger than the 2, it's negative. So that's going to be negative 5 over 5, which when we simplify that just equals negative 1, okay? So that negative 1 goes right here. And then our final step, obviously, is to divide both sides by positive 1, which leaves us with m is equal to negative 1, okay? And that's number 2. Right, number 3. First thing we want to start off with number 3 is by rewriting our problem. We have 2/3 x plus 5 equals negative 3x plus 16, all right? Next, we want to go ahead and split our equation into 2 parts, a left side and a right side. And I'm going to even bring it down some more right there. Now, I want to start with combining my like terms, and I'm going to start with my variables. Remember, we like to get our variables on the right, on the left. So I'm going to move the 3x by adding it to both sides. Once I do that, the 3x's cancel out. And now I simply just have to add these two right here. 2/3 x plus 3x. Well, I know I can change the 3 into a fraction over 1. And now before I add, I have to have common denominator. So I'm going to turn this denominator into 3 by multiplying by 3. And if whatever you do to the bottom of a fraction, you have to do to the top. Once I do that, both of my fractions will have the same denominator. And now that they have the same denominator, I just go ahead and add. So that is 11/3 x, okay? So over here, we're going to write 11/3 x plus 5 equals 16. We bring that 16 down. Now we want to combine the positive 5 and the positive 16 by subtracting 5 or adding negative 5 to both sides. The 5's cancel out. The 11/3 x comes down. That equals 11. 16 minus 5 is 11. Now, the next step here is we could do the next part in 2 steps, but we're going to do it in 1 step, okay? What we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the fraction, okay? And that's how you get rid of that fraction. So the reciprocal means to flip the fraction. So I'm multiplying both sides by the reciprocal of that fraction. What that does, the 3's cancel out, the 11's cancel out, and I'm just left with x. Now I just multiply a whole number times the fraction. And if you don't remember that, we can do that right over here to the side. 11 over 1 times 3 over 11. That gives me 33 over 11. We know when we divide, 33 divided by 11, that gives us positive 3. So our final answer here is x equals 3. And we're done. All right, let's take a look at our last and final problem for this lesson. It's number 4. And we have decimals this time. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it. 4 5/10 plus 1 5/10 y equals negative 3y plus 18. First thing we always want to do is split our equation into 2 parts. Okay. Next, we want to go ahead and combine our like terms. We start with our variables. So what I'm going to do, I like to get all my variables to the left. We're going to add 3y. Because that's how we move the negative 3y. We do the opposite of it by adding. And then I'm going to add 3y over here as well. The 3y's on the right cancel out. And then I do all my other operations. I have 4.5. We bring that down. Plus, now when you add decimals and whole numbers, you have to line them up by the decimal. So 1.5 is here. 3 is a whole number, but we can write it as 3.0, and when we add, that's going to give us 4.5. So over here, this would be 4.5y equals 18. Okay. Now that we've done that, we go ahead and get our other like terms together, our constants. So I'm going to subtract 4.5 from both sides minus 4.5. All right. The 4.5s on the left cancel out. I bring down 4.5y equals. Now I'm subtracting. If you want, we can just do a quick little edit right here and put a 0 and go ahead and subtract. We do that. This becomes 10. That makes that decimal right there 5. Okay. And since we borrowed, that makes this a 7. 7 minus 4 is 3. We bring down the 1. So that gives us 13.5. And now, all we need to do is do our last step, which is divide. 4.5 divided by, divide both sides by 4.5. Sorry about that. And when we do that, the 4.5s on the left cancel out. So we're left with y equal to positive 3 after you do your division. We're going to talk about how we got positive 3 as the answer. Okay? So first thing, this problem right here is written as, it really should be written as, we can rewrite it as a division sentence, 13.5 divided by 4.5, right? Now, that's one way of writing it. When we write it as long division, the 4.5 goes on the outside and the 13.5 goes on the inside. Now, when you divide fractions, the number that is outside the house, as we call it, on the outside, that 4.5 has to be a positive number. Has to be a whole number. So anytime you're dividing decimals, the number that is in this position always must be a whole number. If it's not, we move the decimal to make it a whole number. So I'm gonna move that decimal, and I only have to move it once. Now, the rule is the number on the inside, if it's a decimal, or even if it doesn't have a decimal, you still need to move the decimal however many times you did on the outside. So since I moved it once on the outside, I'm gonna move it once on the inside. Now I rewrite my long division. That's gonna be 45 on the outside and 135 on the inside. So basically this says 135 divided by 45. And now I'm just gonna go ahead and use my multiplication to figure this out. So we'll start with 45 times 1, that equals 45. Then we can do 45 times 2, 45 times 2, that equals 90. So let's try 45 times 3. We just add 45 to 90, and that's going to give us 135. So 45 goes into 135 3 times, which means that's how our answer is positive 3. All right. I'll see you all later. That will conclude today's lesson.